Hello, everybody. I would like to welcome everyone to today's webinar. During this session, we are going to be highlighting the best-in-class, newest generation pyrolyzer from Frontier Laboratories, the Frontier-3030D Multi-Shot Pyrolyzer. If you're a user of the Frontier 2020 series pyrolyzer, you know the quality, accuracy, and reliability that comes with the Frontier brand name. But many 2020 series users are asking us how to best be ready for upgrading to the 3030 series and considerations that they need to take. I'm Lauren Armstrong, Marketing Director for Quantum Analytics, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. A quick note about quantum analytics before I introduce our speakers. We offer solutions for a variety of applications, including gas chromatography, liquid chromatography, mass spec, FTIR, XRD, XRF, SIFT-MS, plus a whole range of sample introduction and preparation products, including the Frontier Pyrolysis system you'll learn about today. Today's webinar, we have three presenters. First, we have Rosine Belganet she is the Technical Director at Frontier Lab America. Before joining Frontier Labs, Rosine was an avid user of the Frontier Pyrolysis system. We have Chuck Renner. He's the National Sales Director for Quantum Analytics, and Chuck has over 3 decades in the analytical laboratory space. And we have Chris Dietrich. He is the Technical Service Director at Quantum Analytics. Chris has been a field service engineer at Quantum Analytics for the past 15 years and experienced it with a number of different instruments like GCMS, purge and trap, pyrolyzers, and thermal desorption. All right, with that being said, Rosine, take it away.
Thank you, Lauren. Before we start discussing pyrolysis, I'd like to provide a short summary about Frontier Lab. Frontier Lab was founded in 1991 by Dr. Chu Watanabe, also known as Chu-san. Chu-san, with the support of polymer scientists at Nagoya University in Japan, developed a pyrolyzer based on a vertical microfurnace design, and we will discuss the characteristic of microfurnace design shortly. We are a global corporation, and our main products are a series of pyrolyzers, such as the multi-shot and single-shot pyrolyzers, rapid screening reactors for catalyst analysis, and a line of ultra-alloy stainless steel capillary columns. Our North American Technology Center is located in Houston, Texas. So here's our agenda for today. We first go over the announcement for end of support and consumables of 2020 pyrolyzers. Then we will discuss the multi-mode 3030D pyrolyzer, its modes of operations, and what sets it apart from others. And then we will also cover the instrument compatibility and hardware. Chris, our service director, will provide information for this part. And then at the end, Chuck will be sharing very exciting details about a special promotion we are extending to our 2020 pyrolyzers. As we have announced previously, the production of a double-shot pyrolyzer, Pi 2020 ID, was discontinued on October 31st of 2010, and the single-shot pyrolyzer, Pi 2020 IS, on March 31st of 2011. It's been almost 10 years since the 2020 series has reached its end of production and has become very difficult to obtain the parts needed to operate these models. As a result, all the consumables and parts for 2020 pyrolyzer will no longer be available after the December 31st of 2020. The successor model for the 2020 ID is the multi-mode EGA Pi 3030D, and for the 2020 IS is the single-shot Pi 3030S. For today, we will be focusing on multi-mode 3030D pyrolyzer and its modes of operations. So what's new in 3030D versus the 2020 ID? We have improved precision, accuracy, and temperature range. The multi-mode EGA Pi 3030D pyrolyzer has an expanded temperature range from ambient to 1050 C versus 800 C in 2020. It has a higher interface temperature, maximum of 450 C, in compared to 400 C in 2020. The productivity has also enhanced for 3030 pyrolyzers. There is faster cooling and faster ramping rate. For example, it takes less than 10 minutes to cool from 800C to 50C in 3030D pyrolyzers versus about 30 minutes of cooling time in 2020 ID. The 3030D pyrolyzer is also redesigned for even easier maintenance and performance with the new and improved part for the pyrolysis tube. And lastly, the unit comes with a 2-year warranty. So here is the table with detailed information that compares 3030D and 2020 ID pyrolyzers as we just discussed. Another improvement is the programming rate of the furnace in 3030D, which is 600 C per minute as the max versus the ramping rate of 100 degrees C per minute in 2020 ID. Now let's discuss how the multi-mode EGA Pi 3030D is used as a sample introduction to expand your GCMS system capabilities. Using the multi-mode pyrolyzer, multiple analysis can be performed on a single sample. The furnace can be used for multiple isothermal and temperature program modes in addition to flash pyrolysis, such as evolved gas analysis, the thermal desorption, hard cutting or thermal slicing, and reactive pyrolysis. We have created a series of techniques referred to as the method map to chemically characterize samples using the multi-mode pyrolyzer. EGA, evolved gas analysis, is the first step, which provides a clear picture about the thermal profile of the sample as well as the optimal temperature zone for the next step. So EGA guides you what to do next. It will show if a thermal desorption, hard cutting, or flash pyrolysis is needed, or if a combination of the techniques is required. To perform EGA, a short and deactivated tube is used to connect the GC injection port to the MS. The sample is dropped into the multi-mode pyrolyzer furnace, which is at a relatively low temperature. The furnace is then programmed to a much higher temperature. In this example shown here, we programmed the furnace from 100 to 700 C, 20 degrees per minute. Compounds evolve continuously from the sample as the temperature increases. A plot of the detector response versus furnace temperature is then obtained, as you could see here. Your x-axis is the temperature as well as the retention time, and the y-axis is the intensity of the MS. After obtaining the EGA thermogram, you can analyze the peaks using the FSearch EGA MS library. If it's needed to further analyze the sample, EGA guides you to the next step. You could perform thermal desorption, which is used for analyzing additives and volatiles, but the key point here is that you are thermally extracting the additives and volatiles from the mixture, so any sample extraction or sample preparation is eliminated. Flash pyrolysis, which is also called the single-shot GCMS, and is the fundamental technique for polymer analysis. In this mode, the furnace is typically programmed at high temperature to break down the polymeric, heavier materials into smaller fragmentation. The key here is that you are performing a true flash pyrolysis, in which all the pyrolysates are directly and continuously transferred on column in a single step. There is no transfer line and no focus, a chemical focus. You can also do a double shot analysis, that is performing two analyses on one single sample. Thermal desorption followed by flash pyrolysis. So first, the additives and volatiles are thermally extracted from the mixture, and you obtain a thermal desorption chromatogram. And then flash pyrolysis is performed to analyze the heavier polymeric compounds from the pyrogram. You can also perform hard cutting, which is the multi-steps thermal desorption and pyrolysis, In this mode, the EGA thermogram will be sliced into multiple temperature zones to obtain separate chromatograms for each zone. So this is the flash pyrolysis or single-shot GCMS. EGA was first performed to identify the optimal pyrolysis temperature. In this case, 600 C is the optimal pyrolysis temperature. To perform flash pyrolysis, the EGA tube is then switched to the separation column using the GCMS vent-free adapter, which allows changing the column without venting the MS and waiting for it to be pumped down. The furnace is then programmed at 600 C, and flash pyrolysis generates a pyrogram that has all the features of the samples, any volatiles, any additives, lights, heavy, and polymeric compounds. Now, if you want to perform a double shot instead of a single shot from the obtained EGA, you first program the furnace from 100 to 300 C to obtain the thermal desorption GCMS chromatogram that corresponds to any residual solvents, monomers, additives, volatiles, and lighter components from the first peak of the EGA, and then 600 C for the flash pyrolysis to analyze the heavier and polymeric compounds from the obtained pyrogram. This is called a double shot because you first performing thermal desorption and thermally extracting lights and additives from the sample, and then flash pyrolysis on the same sample to identify heavier and polymeric fragmentation. Now let's talk a little bit more about hard cutting. Hard cutting is thermally slicing the EGA thermogram into multiple temperature zones to obtain separate GCMS chromatograms. This mode of operation is a very powerful technique for deformulation and reverse engineering, as well as failure and comparison analysis, because you're able to analyze the composition of a mixture in detail. On the right-hand side, you can see the EGA thermogram of an eyeliner that can be sliced into 5 zones, zone A to E. The hard cutting technique allows us to program the pyrolyzer furnace into 5 temperature zones and obtain separate GCMS chromatograms to identify the components in each zone. So the analysis of each thermal zone yields a chromatogram containing only those compounds evolving from the sample of the selected zone. Figure on the left shows each zone and their corresponding identified components. Selective sampler, also shown on the right-hand side, is an accessory that is used for hard cutting technique. Selective sampler allows you to selectively pick and choose which thermal zones of your EGA thermogram you're interested to obtain the GCMS chromatogram, and which one or ones you want to vent and not send to the GC column. So polymeric materials often contain a variety of additives. These compounds are identified using commercial mass spectral MS libraries, but these general purpose MS libraries contain very few entries for pyrolysates and additives, which extremely limits their use for polymer characterization. Frontier Lab developed a search engine and libraries that is called F-Search. The ions associated with hundreds of polymers, their degradation products, and hundreds of additives are used to identify and thus characterize the sample as it is heated in the pyrolyzer. F-Search is a search engine with 4 unique libraries for identifying additives, volatiles, lighter components, as well as oligomers, heavier and polymeric fragmentations. F-Search allows you to create your own user in-house library to perform contamination, comparison, and failure analysis. The EGA and Pi libraries are integrated sum analysis, where the engine integrates the pyrogram, makes an average mass spectrum, and identifies the corresponding compounds. The other 2 libraries, additives and pyrolysates, are for individual peak analysis. This book is also used along with Fsearch and MS libraries as a reference. The book has pyrograms, EGA thermograms, and MS data of major pyrolysates for many polymers. It also has detailed information about the peak assignment table and EGA thermograms of each polymer. So here I'm showing an example page from the book for pyrolysis GCMS of polyethylene. As you can see, the pyrogram of the polymer, in this case the polyethylene, that was performed at 600 C is shown as number 1. Number 2 category is the peak assignment table together with the molecular weight, the relative intensity, and the retention index. Number 3 is the EGA thermogram performed from 100 to 700 C at a rate of 20 degrees per minute, as well as the average mass spectrum of the EGA. And then your number 4 category is the mass spectrum of the top 10 major fragmentation. So Fsearch is a search engine software that contains all that information from the book. Now let's talk a little bit about sample preparation. Sample preparation is very straightforward and efficient. Depending on your sample type, you can use the appropriate sampling tools and place your sample into an inert sample cup. So solid samples can be analyzed as is. No solvent extraction or sample preparation is needed for this technique. The multi-shot pyrolyzer EGA Py-3030D can also be configured with 5 different samplers for manual injection. By simply changing the sampler, the 3030D can be used to make liquid injections. It could do the desorbed sorbent tubes, investigates reactions at high pressure, and even monitor the volatiles release as the material is UV irradiated. The microthermal desorption sampler is used when volatile compounds can be adsorbed or concentrated on a sorbent. The sorbent tube is attached to the sampler. The sampler is then fed to the multi-mode pyrolyzer, and the sorbent tube is heated, which releases the compounds adsorbed on the sorbent surface. The online microreaction sampler is a device that allows a small amount of a sample and an alkali reagent to react under semi-supercritical or supercritical fluid conditions in a small glass capsule, and is fed to the multifunctional pyrolyzer. Then reaction products formed are analyzed online directly by the GC. The maximum use temperature is 400 C. Polyamide is one of the polymers that are very difficult to analyze using ordinary reactive pyrolysis. However, performing the analysis at elevated pressure significantly enhances the organic alkali hydrolysis and the derivatization process. The figure shows here are the chromatograms of nylon 6.6 obtained by 1 flash pyrolysis at 600 C, 2 conventional reactive pyrolysis, and 3 reactive pyrolysis at elevated pressure. Only the chromatogram 3 has large peaks, which are indicative of the nylon 6.6 structure. We also have 2 solid phase extraction elements that are called magic chemisorbers. The polar magic chemisorber shown on the left-hand side is our new invention as the world's first large capacity solid phase extraction element with polyethylene glycol as the stationary phase on a deactivated stainless steel tube. This element is highly sensitive to polar compounds, and the maximum recommended temperature is 250 C. The non-polar magic chemisorber is a chemically bonded polydimethyl siloxane on a titanium tube. There are 3 different sizes and film thicknesses for specific applications. The maximum recommended temperature is 280 C, and as you can see from the specification table here, the smallest one, called S500, is compatible with the auto-shot sampler, whereas the other 2 can be used for manual injection. The non-polar magic chemisorber is for analyzing trace amounts of organics in air or aqueous solutions and for headspace analysis of solids or solution. The chemisorber can be placed in a sample for a fixed period of time, then the extracted compounds are analyzed by thermal desorption mode of operation of the multi-mode furnace. The main application areas for this technique are environmental, food, and clinical analysis. To show an example, the S500 was used for analyzing flaval components in a red wine. The chemisorber was immersed in 10 ml of a red wine for about 25 minutes. Then it was placed in an eco cup, and thermal desorption was performed at 250 C isothermal. Thermally desorbed compounds were swept by helium to the GC injection port configured for a splitless operation. The desorbed compounds were cryotrapped at the head of the GC column using the microjet cryotrap, and they were sent to the separation column and detected by the MS. Various components contained in a red wine were then identified using this technique. The polar magic chemisorber can also be suspended or stirred in a sample, could be gas, liquid, or solid, to extract target compounds. Thermal desorption analysis is then performed using the multi-mode furnace. Here we are showing an example using the polar chemisorber for the odor analysis of a new car. The polar chemisorber was placed in the inlet tube of a small air pump inside a new car for 24 hours. Then it was placed in a deactivated sample cup and TDGCMS measurement was carried out. The furnace temperature was programmed from 100 to 230 C at 20 degrees per minute for thermal desorption. Thermally desorbed compounds were swept by the helium carrier gas to the GC injection port. The desorbed compounds were cryotrapped at the head of the GC column using the microjet cryotrap prior to the chromatographic separation and detection by the MS. Various polar compounds, as you could see, such as phenol and an oxidized product of BHD, were observed in the chromatogram. The results show that the use of the magic chemisorber and the pyrolyzer configured for thermal desorption is a quick and simple technique for analyzing polar compounds in air samples. Now, lastly, let's discuss what sets microfurnace technology apart from others. So there are three different technologies in the market: filament, which uses a coiled wire; curry point, which employs a ferromagnetic foil; and vertical microfurnace, which utilizes a low thermal mass ceramic furnace. Let's start with the microfurnace pyrolyzers. Sample introduction is nearly instantaneous. The sample is placed into that inert sample cup and is held at near ambient temperature in helium and is not subjected to heat before the analysis. The microfurnace is then preheated to the desired temperature that is precisely measured with a thermocouple sensor. The sample cup drops into the quartz pyrolysis tube where the sample is rapidly and reproducibly pyrolyzed. The pyrolysates are directly swept onto the GC column for separation and detection by MS, and this single-step pyrolysis of the microfurnace technology allows low and high molecular weights as well as polar compounds to be detected and analyzed. The absence of any transfer line is also critical for the ability to detect heavy and polar pyrolysates as well as the additives. The microfurnace also guarantees reproducibility and accuracy of the temperature within plus or minus 0.1 degrees Celsius. All surfaces are quartz or temperature stable deactivated. There is no transfer line, no cold spot, and no cross-contamination. Frontier Pyrolyzer is based on a vertical microfurnace technology that performs a one-step analysis. With Frontier technology, all the pyrolysates are directly transferred on column in a single step. There is no switching valves, no focusing trap, and no transfer line. So a full range analysis for detecting low and high molecular weights, as well as polar compounds, can be performed. Shown here with microfurnace design using FID as the detector, up to C100 can be detected. This is because with this technology, the polar and heavy pyrolysates are directly and continuously transferred on GC column as they are formed. Filament pyrolyzers, also known to suffer from poor temperature accuracy and poor reproducibility because of the non-uniform heating. Sample placement and heat transfer variation affect the temperature of the sample, depending on where the sample sits in relation to platinum wire. The filament temperature is then estimated from the electrical properties of the wire, but the temperature of the sample is not actually measured as it changes over the time. The sample must be inserted prior to pyrolysis into a heated manifold to avoid condensation of the pyrolysates. This preheating step causes degradation or thermosetting of samples and evaporation of volatiles and semi-volatile compounds in the samples before the analysis. Some filament pyrolyzers perform a two-step analysis, in which some of the pyrolysates are first collected on a trap. Then switching valve sends the pyrolysates from the focusing trap through a long transfer line into the GC. During this two-step process, polar and heavy compounds may be stuck irreversibly in a focusing trap or are not transferred for analysis because of the cold spots in the system. Lastly, the Curry point pyrolyzer can have a high heating temperature accuracy. However, the heating temperature depends on the alloy composition of the sample foil. It is therefore impossible to continuously raise the heating temperature of the Curry point device to allow for the EGA. The preheating of the heater manifold is also needed, similar to the filament pyrolyzer. So the results vary depending on how the sample is wrapped with the alloy foil that leads to a very poor reproducibility. Also, as we mentioned, as the sample is exposed to heat prior to the analysis in a heating manifold, degradation and thermosetting of the sample happens before starting the analysis, which results in evaporation of volatiles and semi-volatile compounds prior to the analysis. So what is it about Frontier's vertical microfurnace technology that gives such a superior result? With a direct connection to the GC injection port, no transfer line, all the pyrolysates are innately transferred in a single step onto the GC column as they are forming. The full range of light, heavy, and polar compounds are placed directly on the column. The sample, which is placed in an inert sample cup, is held at near ambient temperature and is not exposed to any heat prior to the analysis. Also, the sample is purged of oxygen before heating, so there are no oxidation reactions. Therefore, there is no chance of evaporation, degradation, or thermosetting of your sample prior to the analysis. By controlling the actual sample pyrolysis temperature to within plus or minus 0.1 degrees Celsius, the Frontier low thermal mass microfurnace technology guarantees accuracy and reproducibility. Now I would like to turn the mic over to Chris so he can cover the hardware and the compatibility. That's all for my side.
All right, thank you, Rogine, for the introduction. Again, this is Chris Dietrich with Quantum Analytics. I'm the Technical Service Director, basically the Service Manager for Quantum. And I'm going to talk to you about the compatibility of the 3030 with existing hardware, with new hardware, with your existing accessories, and of course with current operating systems of Windows. If we look at the GC manufacturers, it's important to note that almost every GC manufacturer can house the 3030 Pyrolyzer. What's more important is even the new products like the 8890 GC from Agilent and the new 1300-1310 GC from Thermo Fisher are all compatible with the 3030. If you have existing Frontier accessories such as the carrier gas selector, selective sampler, microjet cryo trap, or any of the accessories shown on the right diagram here, they are all compatible with the new 3030, as well as any consumables like the selective sampler packing adapter. Those have not changed. The only new consumables are used on the 3030, which is the quartz pyrolysis tube and the needle. But the important point is, if you have existing accessories, they can all be used with the new 3030. The important thing to point out is that the 3030 is compatible with any existing Frontier accessory. When we talk about the compatibility with your current PC or a new PC, as you can see from the slide, the 3030 control software is compatible with Windows 10, 8.1, version 8, 7, Vista, and XP, and it does connect to the PC via USB port versus a COM port or RS-232. One thing to point out is, depending on your version of F-Search, that may not be compatible with Windows 10, but there is an upgrade path for older versions at a reduced cost. I'd like to also take a moment and talk about the service options for the 3030. Quantum Analytics is the only authorized Agilent Technologies channel partner distributor for sales and service of Frontier products in the United States and Canada. As it was previously discussed, the 3030 is sold with a 2-year warranty, which includes on-site repair and parts. We have upgraded many customers to the 3030, replacing their existing 2020, and as I've already discussed, all of their accessories are compatible. I often get asked about service coverage for the existing accessories that are out of warranty. We do offer what we call a bridge agreement at a reduced cost, and with the bridge agreement, we only charge for the additional accessories being covered while the 3030 is under warranty. This is optional but provides peace of mind that all of your system components are covered for the same time period. When we come to do an install of the 3030, we will also connect and check out any pre-existing accessory for no additional cost, assuming the accessories are functioning properly. After the warranty period, we also do offer extended warranty agreements for the 3030, yearly PM agreements, and service visits on an as-needed per incident basis. Whether your instrument is under warranty, service agreement, or not, Quantum Analytics will always be able to assist with any of your Frontier needs. Many of our service engineers are GCMS trained as well, so we know how each component of your complete analytical system works together. You can always obtain assistance by emailing support@lqa.com or by dialing our support hotline at 1-800-458-9641. At this point, I'll hand it over to Chuck to talk about our upcoming promotion.
Thank you, Chris. I'm Chuck Renner, the sales manager here at Quantum Analytics. And in order to offer a smoother transition from the 2020 model to the 3030 model, we're offering for a limited time only from January 1st until March 31st, a special promotional discount of 20%. Now, this is not only for the 3030 unit itself, but any consumables that you might be purchasing with the system. Very important to take advantage of this. As we pointed out in earlier slides, the 2020 has been around for a decade. It is now time to retire that model. We want to help our customers as much as possible and make this transition easy. At the bottom of this slide, you will see the URL to go to for inquiries or a quotation request. Also, feel free to contact me, Chuck Renner, at Quantum Analytics if you have any questions regarding the upgrade. Lauren, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Chuck. I want to thank Chuck, Chris, and Regine for taking time today to present the webinar. If you have any questions about the Frontier Pyrolyzer you learned about today, or are ready to make the big next step and trade up your 2020 series model, now is the time to upgrade. You will not want to miss out on that fantastic discount between January 1st, 2020 and March 31st, 2020. Go ahead and visit go.lqa.com/frontier-2020-upgrade and request more information and speak to someone in sales. All right, we want to thank you for your time today, and we look forward to working with you. Take care, everybody.